Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money on the internet. Loaded up discussion today. We have things going green. Bitcoin back to 113K, gold at all-time high, Sol leading majors up 5%, hype surging to $55. I think it touched before a slight pullback. We'll be talking why we think what is happening is happening. We're going to talk Tom Lee's Bitmine announcing their first moonshot investment in OCTO, a company which will execute a world coin treasury strategy, and it's up 3,000% in 24 hours. I saw some interesting takes two ways there. So we'll discuss that, and we'll be talking about Sky, formerly MakerDAO, entering the Hyperliquid stablecoin battle, offering $2.2 billion in USDC instant liquidity for off-chain redemption and an $8 billion balance sheet to be deployed onto Hyperliquid. So that is at least part of the reason for the Hyperliquid move. We'll discuss more details in a bit. I'm delighted to say I've got Legendary and Rahim in the co-host seat with me today. We're ready to get into it, but just a reminder, friends, before we do, nothing that we say here is financial advice ever, no matter how much you want it to be. We do not know anything for sure. This market is extremely risky, so please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Rahim, it is Tuesday. It is the 9th of September. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
GM, everybody. I am feeling good, finding a balance between working and I'm traveling for a bit. Decided to escape the Dubai heat. I'll give it to people. Like, Dubai gets hot in summer, so it's kind of nice to be in good weather. Yesterday I was sitting out in the sun and I was like, whoa, it's been a while since I've sat under the
I'm
sun.
disappointed, Rahim. You told me that it's not that bad in the summer. Everyone else goes and needs to escape. You're fine with it. There's no stress. It's completely manageable. What's going on? You needed a little respite.
Yeah, it's a week. I need to like recharge. Like, I need to, like, it's almost that recoil. I need to have that recoil for a week. So I'm back a week later. I'm back embracing the heat. But I was like, you know what? It would be kind of nice to have a good change of scenery. I haven't traveled all year, actually, and to be honest, it's kind of been nice. It's something we've like spoken about. Like, the markets have been like quiet in some ways. I've been focusing a lot on working and just like reading up some stuff, but definitely there's a lot of like ambiguous stuff happening in the market. Obviously we'll talk about like the whole WorldCoin thing, but super excited to always hang out with you guys.
I'm very excited for that conversation in a bit. Ledge, you've just got back from a bit of a recharge yourself. How are you settling in now that you've been back a little bit? Feeling good?
Yeah, feeling good. But I do want to point out that Coach in the YouTube comments is disappointed with Rahim, saying, GM, Rahim just left me to cook here. And I also want to point out that you, on the timeline, Rahim, you've been saying that, you are out in Europe to recruit people to come to Dubai. And we are getting, this is the timeline framing, the narrative for the timeline, that we are getting the actual story on the show. It's just too hot there and you had to take a break.
No, it's a two-way street, my man. We need to I need to make it sound. I need to be a bit humble. Like, when I made that tweet, I was like, I'm becoming like the Dubai Jesus. I need to, like, humble down a bit. Like, I'm getting people to believe in something and believe in Dubai. So I was like, you know what? There's sometimes you just have like, you hit two birds with a stone.
We got Tom Lee for Dubai. We were searching for Tom Lee for Ethereum. We got Tom Lee for Dubai. Absolutely love it. Love it. So look, we're going to discuss what Tom Lee's actually, the real Tom Lee, not to be confused with Tommy Lee, which sometimes we go in that direction. Sometimes we'll just discuss what he's been up to, because it actually caused a little bit of back and forth, or some people with some alternative takes. So I'm looking forward to getting to that today. Let's get into the main stuff, though, as usual, to get you up to speed with everything that you need to know from the major perspective. Let's start there. In general, it's looking pretty nice. You got Bitcoin up 1% to 112, as high as 113. ETH is up 1% as well to 4.3K. XRP is up 2% to back to $3, up 7% on the week. BNB flat at $882. That's more or less close to all-time high on the BNB side. You got Sol getting different numbers here. It was up much more when I checked in the morning, but up a couple of percent, pushing $220 again, up 7% on the week. The big mover, of course, is Hyperliquid. It's really put in a big move here, up 8% on the day, up 23% on the week. It went past $55, just pulled back just a touch to underneath $55. So big move there. And Sui up 4%, also to $3.60, up 9% on the week. Getting into the meme coin side of things, we have a lot of green as well. Unsurprising, given that the rest of the market is looking pretty nice. Got Doge up a few percent. We've got Pepe up 5%. Pengu is up 7%. Bonk is up 7% as well. Trump is up a couple. SPX is up 7% also. You got Fartcoin up 6%. And you got Rect up 11%. Mog is up 7% as well. So like single digits, maybe the strongest alts being up, just pushing towards double digits. Interesting point here though. This happens sometimes, right, in the market, where something that's performing super well when everything else is doing poorly, then when everything else does well, sells off. So in this case, you've got Pump dropping just a couple of percent. By no means anything to worry about, I don't think. But it's just interesting that on a day when everything else is ripping green, Pump, which is up 27% on the week, is now just down a couple and cooling off. So that's what is going on there from the price perspective. Ledge, just checking in with you on the price side of things. Anything of note there for you? Anything that you're intrigued by? Just pure price.
I saw AI16Z being up 22% on the day and 35% on the week. And Sammy made this point that, despite all the things that are going on with RWAs, collectibles, etc., that the AI mindshare is still pretty constant, maybe has dropped by 1% or so. But it's actually, relatively speaking, with all the new influx of other trends, holding up pretty well. So curious to see if we will get some more attention and price action around AI tokens as well, given that we've seen Kaito, WorldCoin, other alts having a nice day, and see if some of that action will get diverted to the AI side of things.
Yeah, we've kind of walked away from the AI agent sector, right? For a little bit. So I guess we'll keep an eye out. Just an additional point by me, following up on my previous point, something like Troll, for example, is I'm just going to share my screen at the same time. Something like Troll, which is up like 20-something% on the week, been a clear outperformer compared to everything else in the last 7 days or a month or so, is also down, like on this day, down 4%. When everything else kind of catches up, the thing that is strongest kind of sells off or cools down. I have noticed that in general. So that's a good one to point out as well. Just as I move back to the headlines, which we'll get to in a second, just answering some questions in the comments. Alex, yes, we will be at Token 2049. Myself and Rahim will be there. Legendary is TBC at the moment. I believe that is a decision to be made shortly. Shout out to Atari's mum. His mum's in the audience today, I think, unless that's a joke. Nice to meet you. Welcome to the show. Bitcoin is back to 113K. Gold all-time high. Sol leads majors plus 5% to $219. Hype surging to $54 is the first headline. Ledger is going to give us a bit of a breakdown across the board. Rahim's then going to tell us about Tom Lean's Bitmine announcing their first moonshot investment in OCTO, a company which will execute a WorldCoins treasury strategy, and that investment is up 3,000% in 24 hours. So we'll try to make sense of what that means. And Sky, formerly MakerDAO, enters Hyperliquid stablecoin battle. I'll do a little bit of a roundup of where we are on the Hyperliquid stablecoin conversation and why I think that has had such a positive response for price action on Hype. Some notable price action we've mentioned as well. WorldCoin was actually up 50% to $1.90, 19 billion FTV. Crazy low float, high FTV token. I think a lot of people like to short that token, but because there's so much, if there is any buy pressure, which I guess this Tom Lee vehicle, which they've invested in, will provide, it means it can really send, I think. Open Ledger opened at 1.25 billion FTV. Kaito's up 40% in the last 24 hours. So it feels like alts in general here have had a pretty nice move. Ledger, is there anything we need to know on the NFT side before we hit the rest of the roundup?
On the one hand, we have a couple of CryptoPunk sales, one of which you posted at 48.3 ETH. And in terms of the majors, I would say everything is green, but not a lot. Bored Apes up 3%, 9.25 ETH. Pudgy Penguins up 2%, 10.4 ETH. Moonbirds up another 3%, almost back at 3 ETH, 2.95. The rest, like Azukis and Doodles, up pretty much flat over the last 24 hours as well as over the week. So a bit of a green day, nothing too exciting to point out. The only two exceptions, and these are not major collections, would be the Kaito Genesis NFTs, kind of following the token price action, a bit at least. Tokens up 40%. The Genesis NFTs are up 18% at 0.65 ETH. And then Genesis, the Opensea collection, is up 50% on the day, and that's probably to do with more details which were announced around the C token, airdrop C token timeline, and things to come leading up to the token, but still sitting at only 0.02 ETH. So they did trade, I think, 0.04, 0.05 when they peaked initially when they came out. So still, if you bought back then into the initial hype, you're still down 50% or more.
Interesting. I think that's probably related to this. I mean, in general, OpenSea news that they announced yesterday a new mobile app token generation event details in October, and this interesting fund where they're going to have $1 million fund to start sweeping NFTs for a prize fund. My instinctive reaction to that is, hopefully this is a good launch for a lot of the 2021 class who have traded a lot of NFTs in that period of time. They did say that historical activity will get taken into account. If I'm being honest, they really just need to drop the details and just do the thing. Like, I think this is one of the most drawn out, long processes in all of crypto, frankly.
Announcing that you're gonna announce token details in a month it's just annoying.
Just tiring. And who knows, it could be valuable, but the fatigue is so high with these guys in particular. They, as you just showed, they've got these gems out. What the hell? What were they for? What were they for?
When did that collection even mint? I feel like that was more than a year ago. They're like
in the previous bull market or in the bear market. I have no idea. But
let's see how the collection is real quick. And then one thing that I quickly wanted to touch on is, February 2025. Yeah, okay, maybe not that old, but still very old. Did you see Cyrus's post? Because you mentioned this OpenSea plan to buy NFTs back, and Cyrus posted, OpenSea just put out a post saying they'll be sweeping millions in NFTs and that 50% of all of the revenue will be going into this program going forward. And then he said he bought some NFTs on the back of this in hopes to eventually sell them back to OpenSea.
I did see that, but it reminds me exactly of my own reaction when I heard Coinbase were doing an NFT marketplace. Exactly. And I decided literally to buy NFTs to sell to all the people that were going to get onboarded via Coinbase marketplace. So I don't know. I'm just skeptical in this team's execution of basically everything. Although I actually like the product. I think the product is actually better, and some of the communications have got better, but I personally will not be buying NFTs in order to sell it to OpenSea. Rahim, what do you think on the general OpenSea communication strategy? Are you excited for that token generation event? And will you be buying NFTs to sell to OpenSea?
Well, first and foremost, anyone who's excited about this is out to lunch, in my opinion. Because I feel like, firstly, I don't think that $1 million is a lot, considering they would make like multi-million in like royalties during the bull market. Like they've already bought a punk. That's what, like 25% of that 1 million anyways. So they could buy like 10 of the top 10 NFTs, kind of get on everyone's good books. Oh, we bought a Pudgy Penguin, we bought a Chromie Squiggles. And then it's not going to like really pump the market. They also did this thing which I feel like it went under the radar. Maybe it was because they strategically put it lower in their document. Is essentially they're moving their marketplace fees from 0.5% to 1%, which is higher than any of the other platforms are doing it. So yeah, like I completely agree with you. Like I think I get it what they're trying to do, and like they're bringing like the token economy there. They're kind of bringing worlds together. There was that announcement last week, which that OpenSea is like Pudgy Penguin's official marketplace. No one really knows what that means either. But I feel like at this point, instead of them pushing out all of this pre-TGE, I think they should just like rip the band-aid off, because what happens is like you go in the comments, no one cares about what they're doing. It'll be like, when TGE, when TGE, we don't care, just like tell us the date and stuff. So I feel like not only are they losing that smoke that they can probably essentially like announce to push the token up after TGE, but also like I feel like they're hyping it up a lot, and like, you know, announcement, people speculate, buy the OpenSea NFTs, and then like 3 days later they'll be down again. I agree with you. They should just like rip the band-aid off and start building it once you have the token at an all-time low, and then just go up. Otherwise, I don't know what the hell these guys are doing.
I don't disagree with anything that you just said. However, let's just explore a counter take for a second. This was something someone shared recently. Simon from Moonrock Capital, prominent investor, good tweeter in the industry. Everyone thinks that OpenSea is, you know, no one wants to hold the token. Everyone's going to sell it anyway. And to some extent, I think they're in between a rock and a hard place, because what are they supposed to do? If they give you the token, you're going to sell it. If they draw it out and do all this, like, you're still going to sell it. Like, I actually don't know 100% what you're supposed to do. I think maybe they're trying to recover some fees as part of this process, trying to encourage activity. That's what everyone does. They farm their users to some extent. Maybe they've taken it too far, but everyone thinks therefore it's like not going to be valuable. But Simon shared this post. I think there's a bunch of things taking place recently. Maybe it's not entirely appropriate, to be fair, but like, I wanted to pair this post with a couple of others. So you got WellCoin, which is super low float, high FTV. Obviously, that's got the AI thing. It's justifying its $19 billion fully diluted valuation. You've got Kaito that's just pumped back to 140. Athena, okay, this is not a great example, but point is there are some super valuable protocols here that Simon is saying, look, these are not shit coins. These are $1 billion cap coins. And if you notice, the last few weeks, you had OpenLedger launch at 1.25 billion. So this is the better example. I thought some of these were in this tweet. OpenLedger's launched at 1.25 bill. Somnia came out at like 60 cents maybe, and has ripped to $1.50, which I think is 1.5 bill as well. You're seeing like a reasonable number of healthy token launches at the moment. And look, maybe that's because they're low float, high FTV, and it's incredibly well controlled. And that might be the case. But I'm just throwing it out there that just because there will be a lot of sell pressure from historical users, or maybe some negative sentiment from current users, whatever, there's still I think right now, timing wise, is a pretty healthy time to come out, because we're seeing quite nice performance from a bunch of people come to market at the moment. Rahim, what do you think on that as a response? And then Ledge, curious for your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think Magic Eden opened at like a very high FTV value as well, right? If I'm not mistaken, it opened at like a multi-billion. I think it was like 6 billion or something. Maybe like someone can fact check that. But yeah, like I think like, yeah, the argument for like like low float, high FTVs, like I'm sure they have like some sort of Ponzi they'll be building out, especially because they're putting so much effort into the product for the future, right? In the announcement where they said that they're going to move 0.5 like 0.5% to 1% fees on NFTs, they also mention a fee number that they're increasing essentially for tokens. So they clearly have like something in the pipeline that they want to like accelerate. They might use that, like, you know, oh, you have like a season 1, season 2. The one thing I think they should really look into, and I've also mentioned it too when I think their CTO was asking what are the things that you would love to do, and I know B, you love talking about this, is get perpetual loans on like OpenSea. Like the only reason Blur has marketplace has market share right now is because they essentially are helping you do leverage trading with NFTs. And it's leverage trading is a massive narrative this cycle. I mean, like we see this with Hyperliquid. There are so many other platforms. Like it's the easiest low hanging fruit, and I feel like you can build out like an ecosystem where, like, you know, you have like high APYs where you're making fees on it. It'll help the NFT market. They can make money. It'll probably help with their token. So I hope they really take the loan side, because I think loan and really somehow figuring out, okay, how can they push people to trade their coins on their platform could essentially do something for their token. I think it has to be more than just buying and selling NFTs, in my view.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the loan side, Gondi is doing a very good job on the pure, like more static, not perpetual loans, but peer-to-peer side. They've come in, but are not live with every single collection. It's more tied to the Grail NFTs. Ledge, what's your take here before we keep it moving?
Yeah, to answer Rahim's question, Magic Eden currently trading at 70 cents. Did come out at $5.70-ish, and I think that chart, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if this is Opensea's chart as well. It will probably come out at a decent valuation, and it will probably be down 90%. This is not me hating on Opensea, not at all, but I just find it incredibly hard to sustain your valuation as an NFT marketplace only. And NFT lending, yes, that would be a good addition, but ultimately I think you need to have more than that. And we've seen other marketplaces try to integrate token swaps, become the marketplace for everything, do other things. Like the competitors are clearly showing that just being an NFT marketplace is not sufficient these days. You want to do more if you want to stay relevant.
Agree. And that's why I guess they bought Rally to try to get like the mobile trading of coins. So completely agree with that. No additional comments from me. Okay, getting into the rest of the roundup to get up to speed with everything else you need to know. I need to find it because I've just gone to a different spot. Where are we? Here we go. So a ton of other news today, interesting stuff. We mentioned yesterday, but I didn't have it in the snapshot, that Forward Industries announced the $1.65 billion Sol treasury strategy. We talked about that on the show yesterday. Probably behind some of the positive Sol action. Got Mega ETH announcing Mega USD, leveraging Athena as stablecoin as a service. That was a pretty big announcement coming from Bread in the Mega ecosystem. Got Binance announcing Athena's USDE listing. That's pretty cool. Backpack launched an EU-regulated perps offering, which I think is pretty big because I don't think that there's an EU-regulated version of that so far, although maybe just everyone's on Hyperliquid anyway, so I don't know. Line Group announced strategic reallocation of its crypto treasury from Sol and Sui to Hype. Christie's closed its digital art department. You should have been aware there's a large-scale supply chain attack affecting all of crypto users, as they were urged to check all transactions before signing. That was a strange little episode yesterday where people needed to not do any transactions or double check everything. Already spoke about OpenSea. We had Pump Fund announcing a Mexi weekly initiative to list one coin per week. That pumped a specific token that they chose yesterday. Inversion, I like this one. Inversion announced $26.5 million seed raise led by Dragonfly. I didn't finish the sentence there. To bring the idea is to take real businesses and bring them on chain and deliver efficiencies by bringing normal businesses on chain. That's the way to onboard people and unlock a lot of value, in their opinion. I like that idea a lot. Etherscan releases points redemption to unlock premium perks. I would double check that. Etherscan's obviously huge. We use it all the time to read the chain, and if there's points on Etherscan, could there be a token? I don't know, but I would definitely want to have a little look. And then finally, Moonbirds and Moonbirds ecosystem NFTs received community allocation from DYLI RWA platform. Moonbirds cooking on the community collection side. Ledge, before we get into the main stuff, that's the roundup for today. Anything catching your attention?
Yeah, one of the few times I'm actually annoyed by the roundup, and that is for the reason that you posted about the inversion seed race, which is one seed round that I would have really loved to participate in. We spoke about inversion previously. You explained it, Santiago's vision to bring real business on chain and kind of find a way to tokenize the business model, bring GDP on chain, how they were themselves. And I think that's obviously it might sound abstract as a vision, but from what I've read and what I've seen Santiago post about it, I think that could work pretty well. And is while I'm generally annoyed with like all of the new blockchains that are launching, that's one of the few more, you could call it a general purpose blockchain. It's not like really something like Open Ledger that is trying to do a new economic vertical with the proof of attribution or whatever. But that's one where I actually see an interesting business case behind it, and I get it why they did it on their own chain as opposed to like onboarding it to whatever L2. And that's
It's on
one.
Avalanche, no?
Yeah, but it's, I
It's
think,
attached to Avalanche in some ways. Like, is it a subnet or something? I don't know.
exactly, yeah. But that's one seed round to finish my rambling that I would have loved to participate in, and one of the few that didn't get in.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's a real use case for the real world. Like it's targeting a very specific problem, targeting very specific sets of businesses where they think they can add value. And the value add is pretty obvious. I think like you can achieve efficiencies by moving money around with crypto that is not possible when you're transacting across borders ordinarily. Imagine the time and money that is wasted when trying to do that. Good stuff. Okay, Rahim, coming to you before we hit the main headlines as well. Anything catching your attention? You are on mute currently.
Sorry, yeah, I'm really struggling with my tech situation over here.
Sounds good.
To be honest, I think like there are a lot of alts running, and when I mean alt, so I don't know if this was on the news for WorldCoin, but Near Protocol pumped like 10% in the last 24 hours. A vendor pumped 10%. So it's interesting to see, like, I feel like Bitcoin and ETH, they didn't like recover as much per se, considering Bitcoin was trading at like 124K a couple of like weeks ago. Obviously, Pengu is like up ridiculously. Pepe is up like 6-7%. I don't know, like it feels interesting. I feel like a lot of the risk assets are up, where we obviously have the volatility coming, I believe, next week for the actual like rate cuts and stuff. But I think it's just like interesting. I feel like a lot of these alts have been like underperforming, especially on the high risk meme side of things. But from some reason, they've pumped like ridiculously in the last 24 hours. So I don't know what this means yet. I'm keeping an eye. I've been saying this, me and like Moritz, a good friend of all of us, we've been like talking that I fundamentally believe that there's going to be a risk on part of like the cycle. It has to be there. I just like refuse to believe it, just because if you look at the world, it's just become more gambly than anything. The Labubu sales are like ripping off. The Pokemon sales are like absolutely ripping as well. So obviously we saw a couple of protocols within the ecosystem like doing really well, but I think there is going to be like a high risk asset play. Even Virtual's protocol is up like 9% in like the last 24 hours, and no one's really talking about Virtual. So I don't know, I'm excited for what the next couple of weeks holds. I was also watching this video of Tom Lee about him talking about how the last 3 months, like how this quarter is usually like super bullish, and he still believes he's like, regardless of like what the volatility is right now, we follow traditional equities and stuff, and they are doing well. Gold is doing well. So I don't know, I'm bullish. I'm gonna see what happens with the risk assets, but yeah, I'm feeling optimistic, to be honest.
Okay, I have two follow-on questions for you because you mentioned alts, and I'm glad you took in that direction because I know you've been spending a lot of time in the alt arena. First question: how are your leveraged longs playing out at the moment? Are you just like believing, holding, not taking anything off, or are you thinking, okay, this is a great, you've had a huge wins in that arena, and you're going to take a little bit off and hold for a bit more? And then second, on timeframes, I guess you're thinking this next period is going to be pretty bullish, I guess. Is that like are you thinking on a week to week basis or month to month? First question
Yeah,
first.
yeah, I'm looking at it more week to week basis. To be honest, like I closed a lot of my like major longs, like I just mentioned, like the majors haven't like pumped a lot, but it's like more of the risk assets. So I'm not trying to like outsmart the market. It is still volatile, especially because there are two arguments, right? One is obviously, oh, we've priced in the rate cuts, and then the other argument is like, oh no, you guys have no idea. You guys are just having PTSD from bear market. So I'm not trying to like oversmart that play. One trade, however, I feel like there was a part of me that knew that was the right direction to take, but I just didn't take. And we spoke about this last week, which was on the Solana treasury side of things, with like the same companies, the same, like, just like the same ETH playbook. And Solana has been doing like really well in the last couple of days. So like a part of me was like, maybe this is the time I need to reduce my ETH position and go back a bit more on Sol, because I don't have a big position on Sol. Didn't take that bet. But you win some, you miss some. But it is something I'm keeping an eye out. I feel like narratives are fast, keeping an eye on like traditional finance. But like at the moment, especially with what happened in the last 24 hours, very interested in what's happening with like memes and a lot of the risk assets. But I still don't know until like the rate cuts happen and we see a week after what happens after that. I don't want to like try to game the market,
Okay. Yeah, it sounds pretty sensible, to be honest. If you're like longing Pengu from the bottom and are up significantly, like I'm quite a big advocate for like being sensible about these things and like taking the vast majority off if you've made a really good thing. And sure, it could go another 2x. Okay, it could, but you want to lock in certain things. So appreciate your thoughts there. Maybe a follow up question for you, Ledge. I'm talking about Sol outperformance, and maybe this can actually just lead into your next segment. Sol outperforming, but then hype, like just absolutely sending today. Maybe today's show is going to be like you were going to talk a little about Sol. I was going to talk a little bit about hype. Maybe it's all just going to mix together. What do you think about Sol outperformance here, and to the extent it's connected to the treasury company stuff? And maybe we hold Hyperliquid back, or if you want to bring it in, you can.
Yeah, happy to bring Hyperliquid in because my thoughts on Sol are pretty limited. I've sold most of my Sol positions. I think this is a bit of trading of potentially ETF news. Yes, also the Galaxy-backed treasury company, which we mentioned on the show yesterday, but it's not a trade that I'm honestly interested in at the moment. Whereas yesterday on the show, I said that it's not too late to buy Hype because Hype did cross $50 previously, and it always rejected that. That was in absence of the USDH news. So now with that news being so significant, I don't see a reason why it shouldn't go higher, and it did go higher. And there's also, unsurprisingly, a poly market on that. And that's an interesting one to look at because 50% of the market thinks that Hyperliquid might go to $70. 50% of the market thinks it will go, or it could go under $40 as well. And still almost a third of the market, 31% think that Hype could cross $100. I mean, it's obviously a relatively new market, and it's timed by the end of year. So 31st of December, 2025, it has $550,000 worth of volume in it. So it's not as big as, say, the Bitcoin market, but it's still relevant size and interesting to look at. And I don't want to basically foreshadow into the Hyperliquid news. So I think what actually would make sense, and that would be my thought from the portfolio side as well, is to kind of keep in mind that this is a market where everything is running and rallying, and this is quite uncommon. And you'll see that in particular, if we also take a look at the gold price, you said it
Please.
of the show that gold did hit a new.
Thinking about gold. I keep thinking about it.
Yeah, don't only think. Add. Gold hit a new all-time high, 3.65K for an ounce of gold. That means it is up 9% over the last 30 days. It also means that gold year to date is up 37% in dollars. But I'll also look at the stuff from a euro perspective because the dollar is so weak. The dollar is so weak against the euro. In euro terms, gold is quote unquote only up 21%. So basically almost giving up 70-80% of the gains relative to it's not 70, half of the gains almost, sorry, relative to the dollar-based gains. However, the really interesting thing here is where is it? If you look at the historical performance of the S&P 500 versus the gold price, this is a chart that goes back all the way to February 1992 and goes to July 2025. Yes, over that entire time period, the S&P 500 has massively outperformed the gold price, with the gold spot price. If you look at a portfolio that's tied at the same time, put the same amount of money in, the gold portfolio would be a 93K and S&P 500 would be a 290K, so 3xing its performance. However, and this is where it starts to get interesting, 2024 is actually the first year where we had both the S&P 500 and the gold spot price being both up more than 25%.
Wow.
S&P 500 25.02, gold up 26.5%. That never happened before. And also in more recent years, it is actually the case that gold has many, many years where it's been outperforming the S&P 500. And just to highlight how uncommon this 2024 year is, where both assets did more than 25%. Typically, if you look at the last 9 years where the S&P 500 had a negative return, and in 8 out of these years, gold would have outperformed. Obviously, the most significant year being 2008, the financial crisis, where the S&P 500 was down 37% and gold was up 3%. So seeing both those assets rallying at the same extent, and basically seeing the same happening in 2025 with gold now being way more up than the S&P 500, is kind of telling you that this is a market where people, and we said it on the show a couple of times, really want to be in other assets which are not gold. Happy to be in
Which are not
Bitcoin.
the dollar.
Oh, sorry, which are not the dollar. Sorry, yeah. Happy to
Yeah.
be in Bitcoin, happy to be in gold, happy to be in stocks, but getting out of the dollar seems to be the move that the market is making, and it's doing it across so many assets.
Really, really nice analysis. I guess I'm kind of flummoxed a little bit because I'm kind of thinking through the implications for this. Like, I don't think it's a healthy. One of the implications here is it's not a healthy situation for assets to be moving in this way, and gold moving in this way is not indicative of a healthy underlying economy, right? Like, there's real issues which mean that this type of price action is happening. And so it's a little bit sobering actually to think like, wow, okay, we're really in this regime shift where, and look, maybe it's not even, retail is just one thing, crypto Twitter is one thing, but I don't know if you saw that clip circulated yesterday about what the Russians were saying about the US plans for the US plans to push people towards crypto and stablecoins. And it's actually what I said months ago on the show. I think what they said yesterday was that the reason why, literally word for word, and this is translated from Russian, so I hope it was accurate, that the whole point of America's desire to push people towards crypto and stablecoins is so that that creates demand for US treasuries, which most other people in the world now do not want exposure to. Everyone else is trying to get rid of the dollar, as you can see in all of that price action that you're just describing. People are trying to get rid of it, whether it's for traditional foreign exchange or whether it's for gold or other harder assets. But if you can proliferate the stable coins, then that creates a whole ton of demand for dollars again. And stablecoin dollars on chain is going through the roof. So they lose demand for the dollar in one way, and they're gaining demand for the dollar in the other way, which allows them to continue the game of devaluing the currency because they can't get in control of the debt. And this is perfectly articulated by this Russian person that was being interviewed yesterday. And that's why I think so many countries are buying gold, right? They're just trying to decrease their exposure. And I think that's part of the game. Is, in a way, this is part of the end game, which I think people in this industry have spoken about for some time, and whether this is the end game or whether it's like the end game before the end game. Because, arguably people have made these arguments since the previous cycle. We still crashed and then came back again after. So we could say all these things, it seems to be true, and then we crash and come back again. Like, we don't know for sure, but there does seem, with stablecoins in particular, I think we're like hurtling towards that future, because this current administration, I think, knows the importance of it and have put their foot on the gas. Think of how much they've achieved when it comes to the Genius Act, the all of the regulation that they're pushing through to get stablecoins moving is kind of, they're moving at unprecedented tech speed. And so this is the kind of thing I'm thinking about when it comes to, as I said in our Telegram group yesterday, we're like looking through the whole portfolio, getting a big glance of it. I was just like, I don't have enough gold. Don't have enough gold at all. Because and in the backdrop against all of this stuff, I think it's we're on a trajectory that is not reversing, I think is my point, at least not for some time. Lech, curious for you to come in here, then Rahim for your thoughts. So kind of some big ideas. We're kind of crossing a few boundaries here, but curious for your thoughts. Take it in whatever direction you want.
I think you said a lot of interesting things, but the most important one to me is exactly that. I don't think that this is a sustainable setup for everything to be pumping and going up in the way it is. I think that has two implications for me. One of which, and that's the sobering one, is basically if you make money in this market, and that's something I say in every bull market, you're not a genius.
Yeah.
Everything you can buy, gold, alts, maybe not alts. Okay, let's exclude alts, but you could buy gold, Hyperliquid, majors, stocks, treasury companies, Circle, listing, etc., and you would make money on that. So that is, I think it's important to like kind of keep that euphoria in check a little. Yes, you know, we could go up and go up forever, but I don't think it's a sustainable setup if everything pumps. And then the second thought is, if we see an everything pump, will we see an everything crash? And in an everything crash, what are the assets that I want to hold? Is it just BTC and gold, or is it like primarily BTC and gold? And that is once more like reinforcing this perspective of mine that I said I'm 50% in stables. I want to go down in my stable allocation. And most importantly, I think I'm going to shift even the remainder of my stables, which are in dollars, shift all of that to euro as a euro-based person. Because I said, you know, the caveat to that was I need dollars for everything. I need dollars to farm ETH. I need dollars to farm Fidgetals, but I can also like swap it every time. And again, that's very specific and unique to my case, because in my jurisdiction, crypto to crypto swaps are tax-free. So I can swap around euro dollars in stablecoins and not cause a taxable event. So I think that might be the smartest way forward for me, but that is not applicable to many people that I know.
I like that question that you asked. It's like, okay, in an everything pump scenario, that's one thing. Holding anything doesn't make you a genius, but what's the things you want to hold in an everything crash scenario? Because as you say, like the thesis that we're talking through, like the end game for crypto because of debasement of currency, people have been talking about it for years and years. It doesn't mean that it went up in a straight line, right? There were still humongous dips across all, and you know, gold for just because gold's going up in a straight line at the moment, gold also has not gone up in a straight line forever either. Rahim, when you're thinking about that question, Funky, I see you with your hand, will come to you in a moment. When you're thinking about that question, like, what do you want to hold in a everything crash scenario? Is there anything that comes to mind? Just looking in the comments here, English said Bitcoin and gold, takeoff tone, hype, Bitcoin and sealed Pokemon. There might be some physical IRL stuff without even joking. Like there might be some things like that that are pretty nice to hold. Rahim, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much aligned on the gold side of things. I think there are like a couple of caveats to put into this argument. Like, you know, when we're thinking about that, okay, what do you want to hold when this big crash happens, or how precedented this is? That I feel like, yes, we had the 2008 crisis, which was like a big event that the world got to see, and then the last one we saw was essentially COVID. I think in some ways, like, I think the things to keep in mind in my POV is that the access for people to essentially buy gold or buy stocks or buy other things has gone exponentially high. This is something that just did not exist before and stuff. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Like, it's, of course, I feel like everyone's preparing for it a lot more because they've already seen those like two big market crashes. So I feel like, again, I'm just like trying to take a different spin, although I don't disagree with what like you and Ledge both said, but I'm also saying that there's a good chance that people are like hedging their risks way more than they did in the past, because our generations got to see what that crash looks like. I also think, you know, when we talk about that, like if we have, like, imagine we have the same level of crash that the FTX crash happened, like right now, with so much leverage trading in place. Like I wonder how differently like that pans out and stuff. Like how often are
Hmm.
you so sure like the entire market is going to nuke, and if everyone's deciding to short and think that they're going to make like money, I feel like it becomes like a lot more volatile. I feel like there are some nuances to take into consideration, and not denying like everything the both of you said, but I do think like, you know, you look at the M2 money supply, which has been on a rise still. I don't think, I get it. Like everyone, you look at gold, you look at like the S&P 500, and it feels like, okay, we are getting that toppy scenario and stuff. But I also feel like people have just like become smarter. The younger generation is kind of understanding that, okay, they're getting into investing, they're getting into like hedging their bets. So a rise in a lot of like non-dollar assets uh, doesn't like blanket, in my view, sometimes means that, oh, like this is like showing like the state of the world economy is like going downhill and everything is bad. I would argue it's showing that the world is becoming smarter also in some ways, you know.
Okay. You mentioned the crash scenario there. We'll get into this Bitmine stuff, which is pretty speculative in just a moment. Just want to give Funky a chance to come up. Funky, your hand is raised. Welcome to the stage, Moran. What's your take on this conversation before we move it on to Bitmine?
Yeah, great conversation. Actually, as I said to Sam, aka NFT Stats yesterday, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? This is something that has been really telegraphed for almost a year. I think I talked about this before. Last December at the BA Summit in DC, I remember sitting at a fireside chat with Senator Bill Haggerty, who was the main sponsor of the Genius Act. And he said the number one thing that we have to do as a nation is to ensure that there's regulatory clarity. And the thing that we have to start with is stable coins. And he specifically talked about proliferation of the US dollar into the global economy. And as we continue to go on chain and everything, I mean, just you look at the ENA news yesterday, all of it. I mean, you guys have talked about it for many, 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 many months. Stable coins are the name of the game. And I feel like this is something that is only going to strengthen as a trend. And, you know, Russia can say what it wants. And whether it's true or not, I still think that it's something that is only going to see this trend go up and to the right, like the rest of everything else in crypto.
I want to come back to this point on another day because I think there's an interesting interplay there between stablecoins going up being good for the US and equally it's like good for the dollar and bad for the dollar. Like I think my thinking is starting to evolve to the point where like, yeah, stablecoins going up is good for US power, bad for the dollar. That's where my evolution is coming from based on the explanation I just gave earlier. I'm not going to repeat it again now, but I want to have some more time and articulate that again at some point because I also want to think about how the role that a synthetic dollar plays and what that means for something like Athena, which TBL is ballooning, and whether there's something there that is better than the dollar. Stablecoin, which is synthetic. Okay. Anyway, I need to think on that more, but I think I've articulated some of my thoughts in that direction, and I want to do that again another time. Rahim, we spoke about like some speculative stuff here. Talk us through this Bitmine, Tom Lee, OCTO investment. When people are wondering, like, okay, is this the top? Is this like not the top? This is one of the things that I think people are saying, well, this sounds pretty insane. What do we need to know here? What's the core information? What's important here?
Yeah, so ATCO essentially is like a publicly listed Nasdaq company that is involved in e-commerce infrastructure. They essentially announced, so they basically had a director come in named Dan Eves. So a very similar situation that we saw when Tom Lee came into Bitmine. And like the first order of business was that there was a private placement announced for 250 million US dollars for WorldCoin. So now it's interesting to know the part of like this private placement were some institutional companies involved. Firstly, it was World Foundation, which I don't know how it kind of makes sense because the foundation is investing in a company that is buying their own coins. So they are there. But then you have Pantera Capital and Kraken as well, part of that 250 million private placement. This essentially also got Tom Lee interested, and he came in with $20 million investing into that ecosystem. saying that he kind of believes that the fact that they are building this as an ERC20 on Ethereum, he wants to power that the next generation of like this AI technology. On the back of this, we saw the stock soar up to 3,000%, as mentioned by you earlier, which is absolutely nuts to think about. Even WorldCoin is sitting, it's up 50% in the last 24 hours. And I believe in the last like 48 hours, it was up around like 100%. So I think obviously a couple of things we've talked about many months ago on like how the whole WorldCoin evaluations are like so skewed because they have like a couple I think they have like about 2.5 billion people who've registered through that WorldCoin ecosystem, but it's also they've been like very what do you call they've been like very smart about it because they've went to like a lot of these like underdeveloped countries. They've convinced people to like scan their irises, and essentially they have the token allocation, but these people don't know how to get that converted into their local currency or how to actually go about it. So there were like a lot of like back couple of months back, there was like a lot of negative press around this
Sure.
idea that they've targeted certain countries like that. So obviously that's important to keep in mind when you're looking at price action for WorldCoin. And yeah, this is I think like very similar to the playbook of Tom Lee coming and doing this for Bitmine, which was focused on BTC infrastructure. So now they came in and they did this for AI, which on the back ended up pumping near protocol and render. So again, it's one of those things like it's kind of hard to play if you don't know this, like who knew what ATCO was and who's investing in like e-commerce infrastructure platforms. But it's definitely interesting to see that we are seeing these treasury companies buying into this narrative of AI and Web3 across.
I like it. Excellent summary, Rahim. The only thing I would add is that Tom Lee, as you said, came in with an investment of I think 20 mil into this company. It's up 4,000% in the last 24 hours, maybe a little bit less at this point. That's an insane return. I think I saw somewhere, I'm trying to find the number, but this is like a multi-$100 million position now that they have made. I'm very skeptical on this type of investment strategy from any fund, or at least the behavior which it is exhibiting. Sure, that crypto obviously, and in money making, like you're always trying to invest, you're always trying to make money, you're always trying to do that on a, I guess, a shorter time frame as possible. But pumping up like a stock in this way, and then I suspect exiting pretty soon, this feels like very, very late stage behavior if you had to try to place it. I had this one tweet from Keyboard Monkey, who, to be fair, he's a great trader, great, very, very short time frame trader, but he's been wrong like a little bit recently. But maybe he's talking maybe midterm, and in the short term it hasn't really played out. He's been calling for ETH to go much lower based on some of this type of activity. He said this, he said, market is going to go sideways, downward chop for the next 6 to 12 months and separate everyone from their money. If you think we're going higher when Tom Lee and Dan Ives are out here treasury scamming, then you are dumb. Very strong words. Legendary. What do you think?
I love Keyboard Monkey style of posting. I share the fundamental thinking behind that. I don't think that Tom Lee thinks that ETH on a reasonable time frame is going to $150,000, $250,000, whatever. I think if ETH goes up a fair amount, of some point the treasury companies will book profits. And a friend of mine said it, like ETH goes to 10K, or even say 15K potentially over the next couple of years. Tom Lee is booking profits, and he's like, "What? You got a 3-4x and you didn't book profits? What are you guys on? What are you guys doing?" And that wouldn't be an outcome that surprises me. So I don't think we're gonna see like downward chop for the next year, but I fundamentally subscribe to the idea that Keyboard Monkey has shared behind that.
I think sometimes you got to envision your own headlines, like when we're talking amongst ourselves in 6 months' time, in 12 months' time, in 18 months' time. You want to envision this headline being read to you: the stock scammed up 5,000% and counting. And you didn't sell. Like, you didn't sell anything. You took no profits when like established funds are up 5,000% in a day because of a multi-million-dollar investment they made into what is already like a relatively dubious vehicle for accumulation tokens, which some of which are not even that desirable. I completely get it. Well, I get it more for Bitcoin. I can kind of see a case for ETH and Sol as well, maybe Hyperliquid too, and some of the top L1 tokens. I mean, I saw one about a Doge, the biggest Dogecoin something earlier today as well. Here we go. 14 hours ago. Let me share the screen so you guys can see. 14 hours ago, Clean Core Solutions acquires 285 million Doge with strategic goal to accumulate the first milestone target of 1 billion Doge in 30 days as the newly launched official Dogecoin treasury. Like, look, guys, like, I don't know, that's just not, it's fun, it's funny, it's cool if you're holding Doge, and I hope that they get to their $1 billion goal, and many more billions continue to come. But I just think sometimes you need to envisage the future headlines as like, okay, some of this is incredibly frothy, and I get that. Look, we're going into a rate cutting environment and all this stuff. I just think maybe we're still early because we haven't really entered the rate cutting cycle, but just being conscious of it and taking a touch off, I imagine, is probably wise when you're seeing this, because this is extreme in my view. Am I being like, I kind of subscribe to Keyboard Monkey's take. Like, am I being extreme here, Ledge, Rahim? Is this like and so non-consensus?
No, I think you're spot on. I think like everyone, like his reaction, and I completely agree with like even what Led said. I think it's like he's gonna come out and being like, "Oh, it pumped like 3-4x and you didn't take profit." It's like that like, you know, that good old saying, "You aim for the stars. The worst that will happen is you will land on the moon." He's been talking about flipping BTC, ETH to flip BTC, so it doesn't even have to get there. And when like people are gonna call out, he's gonna probably do that Eric Trump thing and like go tweet people and be like, "Oh, you didn't sell ETH at like 10K or like 8K, 9K." But I do think I completely agree with you. I also think in some ways, to me, like words like official and first have completely like lost meaning, because I feel like I've seen so many treasury companies come out and be like, "Oh, we are the first official Doge thing." I've seen like so many people talk about like ETFs and treasury companies when it comes to like Doge. So I don't know where these first unofficial term for, but I feel like these are like all PR stunts that people have been like using. But yeah, I do think it's getting frothy, but yeah, you gotta take it one step at a time.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think that's we've dealt with that. Something to be aware of as we progress through the cycle. Final headline for the day as we kind of close out today, because we kind of run over time, is just a quick touch on it, although it probably deserves more time. I'm sure it's not going away, so we can talk about it more in the next couple of days. USDH powered by Sky has been proposed by the Sky ecosystem. Remember, these are the former MakerDAO team, so they print money from the MakerDAO ecosystem. They've suggested 4.85% rewards on all USDH on Hyperliquid as they try to become the native stablecoin issuer for Hyperliquid. $2.2 billion USDC in instant redemption liquidity, and they've suggested they can deploy $8 billion of the Sky balance sheet ready to deploy into Hyperliquid. And Bread made this interesting point, which was Sky will be able to deploy its 8 billion plus balance sheet into Hyperliquid. This is nuts, because that would immediately put Hyperliquid's rough TVL top 3 and close to flipping Solana number 2. So, you know, at the moment, as you can see from this chart, like Hyperliquid is not on the chains for top DeFi TVL. You've got ETH at 91, Solana at 12, Bitcoin at 7, BSC at 7, Tron at 6. If someone was going to deploy in that size to Hyperliquid, then Hyperliquid suddenly becomes like right up there. And I think all of these conversations, not only with, you know, this specific Maker conversation is one that's just come out the last 24 hours, but all of the top tier conversations, which have been the top tier teams who have been who are getting involved to try to take this USDH ticker, which is going to go to a vote by the Hyperliquid validators, is just has made people so bullish because they realize the scale and potential for Hyperliquid now and the quality of what it is. And I think that's driving a lot of this most recent price action. This funny comment from Mert said, bros, this, not gonna lie, this is pretty crazy. Hyperliquid has grown men writing public love letters to their protocol so that they can get picked as a partner. This is basically The Bachelor, but for stable coins. This was quote tweeting a tweet from Jan van Eck, who is just like talking through some of their thinking and some of their proposals. So it's really got the best issuers wanting to be a part of it, and I think that is a lot to do with why Hyperliquid has managed to make this leg up. It's been stuck in that range for a while, and now it's managed to make it up because of this whole conversation. So that is why that's happening. Pretty fortunate that I think we're pretty sizably allocated towards Hyperliquid. Has probably been one of our biggest allocations since I can't remember when in the year during the lows. So nice to see this play out and see some of that conviction get confirmed by the market and by the teams and builders who are building on top of it. Guys, I'm conscious we've run out of time today, so Legend, unless there's anything, if you want to make a quick point on Hyperliquid, maybe we close out there.
Yeah,
anything
quick final shout out to Trav in the YouTube comments saying something that I would have missed otherwise. You can bet on the USDH outcome poly market. I'm not surprised by that. It's a small market, it's a new market, 55K in volume, so I assume there will be more money to come into that. Currently being led by native markets, 55%, then Paxos 36%, then Sky 9%, Frax and Agora at 2% and 1% respectively.
Interesting. Native markets is like the least accomplished in the sense that the least TradFi, big name background, and the more community aligned, I think, from that perspective. So that will be interesting one to watch. Good stuff, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, just a reminder, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. We're live on X video, YouTube, and you can catch us on Apple and Spotify podcast too. That was a fun show. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it too. Thanks to my co-host, Legendary and Rahim, as always. And thank you so much for joining. We will be back again with you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.